Sundar. I'm E Lightning. We're doing a way too early 2017 college football top 10 with Lycan Spooky. We've done a lot of these, so let's get right into it with your top 10.
I guess I'll go first. At number 10, I have South Florida. It's kind of a surprise. They had a pretty good season this year. They lose Willie Taggart, head coach, bring in Charlie Strong. I think Quentin Flowers is going to have a phenomenal season for them, win the American Conference, slide into the top 10. At number 9, I have Penn State at 10-2. I feel like they're going to have super high expectations and kind of just fall short with a difficult schedule. At number 8, I have Clemson, the reigning national champions. They do lose Deshaun Watson, their best player, but they're still a very talented team. I just don't think they're going to be in the playoff next year. Number 7, I have Oklahoma. Baker Mayfield comes back, but they do lose Mixon and Westbrook, two vital pieces of their offense. Baker Mayfield probably will play well. I just don't think it's going to be enough to get them in the playoff. At number 6, I have the Washington Huskies. Return a lot of players, but USC looks like the dominant team in the Pac-12 going into next season. I feel like Washington will fall short just in the championship game. Number 5, I have the Florida State Seminoles. 11-2, I have them as the ACC champions, but I feel like with 2 losses, they're not going to get in the playoff. At number 4, I have kind of a surprise team. I have Oklahoma State. They return Mason Rudolph and James Washington, 2 vital pieces. I feel like they're going to put up huge numbers for them, win the Big 12 with a 12-1 record to slide in at the number 4 spot. Number 3, I have Alabama, the runner-up from this year. Played very well, return a lot of pieces. I feel like they're going to go 12-1. That one loss is going to kind of drop them down to number 3. Number 2, I have USC. I'm going to have them go undefeated, win the Pac-12, but fall just short of the number 1 spot to Ohio State. Returns a ton of players. They're going to be angry after their loss to Clemson. Kind of avenge that. I feel like they're going to really come back with a lot of revenge, a lot of angst, and they're going to really just roll through their schedule.
I guess I'll go next. At number 10, I have the Auburn Tigers. They return their starting quarterback, and I think Auburn is going to have another good recruiting class. And I think Auburn will. This is the year bounce back. And I think Gus Malzahn, if he stays, will really be fighting for his job this year. I think that'll motivate them into the top 10. At number 9, I have the Huskies. I have them falling a little bit farther. They keep their receiver Pettis as well as Jake Browning. And Jake Browning was kind of robbed of a trip to New York this year, in my opinion. I think they'll fall with the emergence of USC, but not too far. At number 8, I have Oklahoma. Baker Mayfield comes back, but I just think that, as you mentioned, the rest of the Big 12, I think, will get better. That will kind of hold Oklahoma back with maybe 1 or 2 losses. At number 7, I have Clemson. Now, while they do lose a lot of starters, you can't count Clemson out. They have a lot of talent still there. They have a lot of talent coming in. I don't think there's any way, as well as a great coach, I don't think you can completely jet them out of their top 10. At number 6, I have Oklahoma State, barely missing out on the playoff. I think the Big 12 will really beat up on each other this year. I think with the returning of Mason Rudolph, I think they'll be good. I just don't think they'll be good enough to get into the college football playoff. At number 5, just getting snubbed, I'll have Ohio State. I just think that they will be a greatly improved team. They lose so much every year, but I just think with Penn State I think they'll be really good next year. I just think that'll hold Ohio State back. At number 4, I have Florida State. While they do lose a lot of players, especially Dalvin Cook, they return most of their defense, including star safety James Derwin. And DeAndre Francois looked great toward the end of the season. I think he'll be another good season. At number 3, I have Penn State. I think they can win the Big Ten with 1 or 2 losses. I think the Big Ten champion should not be denied a playoff berth. I mean, especially if it only has 1 or 2 losses. And I think behind Saquon Barkley, who's I think one of the Heisman contenders, and as well as Trace McSorley, Penn State is really good this year. At number 2, I also have USC going undefeated. Sam Darnold is another Heisman contender. This offense is going to be explosive, and I just think there's no way I don't see USC losing the Pac-12. At number 1, I have Alabama. Jalen Hurts, I think, is my Heisman favorite. And I think Alabama is just way too talented and way too good. I don't think they're going to give up the number 1 position.
All right, and for me, at number 10, I got Oklahoma because even though Mayfield is coming back, obviously they're losing Mixon and Westbrook, and those are like 2 of his key players that he's not going to have. So I see them making the top 10, but I don't see them being playoff contenders next year. At number 9, I got Michigan because, I mean, they lost a ton this year. They were I think they had 15 starting seniors that aren't going to be returning. So it'll be interesting to see what they do this year. Also at number 8, I got Wisconsin because they do have a decent amount of their defense coming back, and I think that, as usual, they're going to have a pretty stellar defense. So I see them breaking the top 10 coming in at number 8. And then number 7, I don't know a lot about Oklahoma State. I just know they have a decent amount of talent coming in and staying this year. So I see them possibly being in the mix. And like you said, the Big 12 this year, except for Oklahoma, obviously, it just beat up with each other once they got into the conference play. At my number 6, I got Clemson because, obviously losing Watson, and they're also losing their tight end and a couple other their best receivers. So they're going to be kind of in a toss-up area with the quarterback and receiver situation, I think. And then at number 5, I got Penn State because Penn State's going to be returning a lot of their players again. And the only team I can see beating Penn State is Ohio State. I think that's going to be the best game in the Big Ten play this season, possibly. And then at number 4, I got Florida State. They're going to have a ton of people back, as a lot of these other teams. They got 16 returning starters between their offense and defense. And they're keeping their quarterback, so he's going to be a lot better this year. And that's why I see FSU being number 4 and getting into the playoffs. At number 3, I got Alabama because who's probably going to win the Heisman, Jalen Hurts, next year is going to be returning along with a couple other guys. So as usual, Bama's probably going to be in the playoffs, if not number 2 or 1. And then at my number 2 spot, I do have my Buckeyes, mainly just because of the fact that they're returning Barrett again, along with, I think, 17 returning starters, which I think might be the most out of any of these top 25 teams this year. 17 is a crazy amount of guys, and they have a lot of talent on their defense returning, even losing like Malik Hooker and those guys. But I think OSU's defense and offense is going to be a lot better than it was last year in that playoff game. And then at number 1, I got USC. I see them rolling right through the Pac-10 with no problem at all, and I look to see them in the playoffs next year.
All right, so I guess now let's do our semifinal games and our finals. So I guess I'll go first. I have Ohio State playing Oklahoma State, and I feel like just both teams are very talented, but Ohio State just has that has a extreme talent gap over Oklahoma State with their supreme recruiting. I think Ohio State pretty easily beats the Cowboys to move on to the national final. Next, I have the USC Trojans against the Alabama Crimson Tide. USC hasn't been here before. Alabama's been here all 3 playoffs, and this would be their 4th. But I'm actually going to have USC beat the Crimson Tide here. I feel like they have definitely the talent to defense and an amazing quarterback in Sam Darnold to do so. Kind of with the same formula Clemson used to beat them this year. I feel like USC definitely has the talent capability to beat Alabama. And then in my final, I have Ohio State and USC. And I'm actually going to have USC win the national title this year, sweeping through everything, winning all of their games to continue their winning streak, going all the way back to earlier this year. I think USC is going to be my national champion.
My first game is Alabama versus Florida State. Now, Florida State does have Francois and a lot of returning talent. Alabama just has more talent. I think Jalen Hurts will win this with young quarterback duel, and I just think Alabama's too talented and just too experienced to lose to Florida State. And then my second semifinal is USC versus Penn State, rematch of the Rose Bowl. That was an absolutely tremendous game. And I'm going to have Penn State coming out on top this time. I think that can kind of motivate them. As we saw, these are 2 offensive heavyweights, and I think Penn State will get that last touchdown to get a victory, get a close one. And then my final would be Penn State versus Alabama. Well, no, Penn State has made it this far. I just think Alabama's too experienced, too talented once again. They've always shut down the run, and I think they'll do it again against Saquon Barkley. And then when you start trying to throw deep passes against Alabama, it doesn't work. And I just think Penn State has the right mold to beat Alabama.
All right, and for my number 1 versus 4 matchup, I'm going to have USC playing the Buckeyes. And I'm going to have Buckeyes actually pulling an upset over USC because I just think with the 17 returning starters that they're going to have, I think Urban Meyer's going to have them ready and not let anything like what happened against Clemson happen ever again. Like, I believe that was his first ever scoreless game. So I see Buckeyes coming back with a vengeance this year to make it to the championship. And I'm going to have them for my 2 and 3 game. I'm going to have Florida State playing Alabama. And with Jalen Hurts and just the talent that Alabama is going to always have and I believe keep on having, I see Bama rolling over FSU to make it into the championship against Ohio State. I'm actually going to have Bama beating the Buckeyes in the national championship because Jalen Hurts going to have a lot more experience under his belt now. and they're going to have a couple other returning starters back that are going to be great. So I just see Alabama taking the championship out of the Buckeyes' hands.
All right, so I guess that is it for us today at Sports Storm. Go sub to Lycan Spooky for kind of more of this stuff. You have some Call of Duty stuff you like that. Go sub to his channel. That's it for us today at Sports Storm. Like,
comment,
subscribe. Peace.